Donkey Kong Country is one of the best platformers in all of gaming. It's challenging but fair, fun and different, and doesn't need online play or updates to fix out any bugs, like other games out there. Returns brought the series back after a long hiatus and renewed the formula for what made a Donkey Kong Country game Donkey Kong Country. Tropical Freeze capitalized on that formula with stunning HD graphics, amazing level design, and brought back the legend himself, David Wise, for the best soundtrack I've ever heard in a platformer. Anyways, here are 5 ideas I've gathered to potentially keep the series moving forward whilst keeping the charm that is Donkey Kong Country. Sorry for my voice. Number 1. The Animal Buddies. In the original DKC trilogy, Animal Buddies were a main part of the gameplay. Not only were they used for getting through levels easier, but each had their own unique ability. Rambi could pound through enemies in a breeze, Espresso allowed you to soar over levels, Winky could jump high, I guess that's helpful, and Garden made water levels so much more tolerable, Rattly was a better Winky, Squitter created webs you could use as platforms, Ellie could shoot out water as a projectile, and so on and so forth. Point is, as awesome as Donkey Kong Country is with just the Kongs as playable, having the Animal Buddies allows for so many other different styles of gameplay that can help keep the game fresh and interesting. Although both Returns and Tropical Freeze were amazing games without them, especially Tropical Freeze, but having them in gives the developers so much more variety to choose from. Honestly, I think some levels are just made for the Animal Buddies. Though I wouldn't mind if in the next game they were only kept as like optional secret finds to help make levels more of a breeze, and perhaps to discover secrets. Either way, they need to come back in some form, and it'd be awesome to see more of them return. Number 2. Kiddy Kong returning. I can't be the only one who wouldn't mind seeing Kiddy Kong again, right? Like, it'd be cool to have all 4 Kongs from the original DKC trilogy as playable characters all in the same game. One thing I really liked about Tropical Freeze was having 3 other Kongs and how each Kong had their own unique trait. Diddy could use his jetpack for more horizontal distance, Dixie was back and topped Diddy with the best hair twirl ever in Donkey Kong Country, and then we also had Cranky who could use his cane to bounce on enemies and objects that other Kongs could not. What about Kiddy Kong then? What would his unique trait be? Well, similar to Donkey Kong Country 3, they could have him toss you up, or do a cool flip jump if you're playing solo, for more vertical distance, and upon impact could vibrate the ground, stunning enemies around you. Basically, he has the most vertical reach, but doesn't float like Diddy or Dixie. And while the community may not take much of a liking to him, he'd be completely optional. Like Tropical Freeze, just pick your preferred Kong for each level. I'd also like if Diddy got just a little bit more horizontal reach with his jetpack, only so he isn't so overlooked by Dixie again, like in Tropical Freeze. Also, if the Kong Pao were to return, Kiddy and DK, or whoever, could turn enemies into fat bunches of nanners, because I really don't know what else he could turn them into. But that's just my hope. On to the next point. Number 3. 4-player co-op. The third hope I have is the option to be able to play with up to 4 players simultaneously. Donkey Kong Country is and has always been a single-player experience, with the option to play with or against a friend ever since the original titles back on the Super Nintendo. The game is just too good to play alone, and with all the Kongs we have now, 4-player co-op just makes more sense. I understand this would require a somewhat different approach to level design, but given Retro's reputation with the series, I'd be confident they could pull it off without having it impact the single-player experience. As long as it's made to be fun and with a fair challenge in mind for both single and multiplayer experiences, I've no doubt Retro can pull this off. It's more so a matter of if they'd want to upgrade Donkey Kong Country from a 2-player co-op game to a 4-player one, and if they didn't, I couldn't complain. I'm just hoping to be able to play it with 3 of my other friends someday. Number 4. Beta Elements concept art from Tropical Freeze and Donkey Kong Country Returns. Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze introduced these puzzle piece items that you could collect, that would unlock an image if you obtain all of them in a level. And some of these images are more than just, well, images. Some of them contain really unique and cool concept art that could look like they'd be so cool to have in the game. Spoilers ahead, fair warning. A bonus snowball fight room. I presume this idea was to help you earn extra lives or banana coins, maybe even be a sort of side mode like the mini games in Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3. A level where you're surfing down a river of juice atop a half-sliced orange. The freaking moon as a bonus world. Seriously, just going through all of these and seeing the ideas the developers had, it's astounding. And if I give Tropical Freeze a lot of praise, it's because it's the best platformer out there, hands down. But going through these images and just seeing the sheer amount of other content we could have gotten, even though I like Tropical Freeze so much better, I can't forget about Returns. And it looks like the developers had some cool ideas here too, back in 2010. Seeing all these alone, there's tons of unused content that could warrant a third DKC game by Retro, and I so hope there is. Number 5, the Kremlings. My number 5 option is to bring back the Kremlings. Let me just say, I think Retro's characters, at least the Vikings from Tropical Freeze, have some of the best designs and personality I've ever seen in a video game. I have no problem if there's a third DKCR game and the Kremlings are absent once again. And this is coming from one of the biggest K-Rool supporters for Smash. Reason being that Retro has proved themselves more than worthy of creating enemies and villains for Donkey Kong that not only fit well, but have their own backstory and reasons for wanting to take over Donkey Kong Island. Part of the reason I think Tropical Freeze is as memorable to us as DKC2 is to old school fans is because of the culture of the enemies here. DKC1, while being an amazing game in itself, didn't really have enemies that could relate to much more than just enemies being enemies. And the same goes for Returns with the Tikis. The enemies in DKC2, however, were all based on pirates, and similarly as Vikings in Tropical Freeze. Does this mean Knights as the rivals in the third DKCR game? It would seem that whatever the next group of enemies the Kongs would have to face, the more they can relate to a sort of villainous theme, the more likable and memorable they end up being to us. They did this with the Kremlings in DKC2, basing not just the enemies, but the levels, worlds, and themes around this pirate-based atmosphere. Though, to be fair, the Kremlings are known to be DK's main enemies, but when they should be brought back as the main villains, or not, is debatable. Notice I said when, not whether. Although even if the Kremlings were not used as the main villains in the next installment, it'd be awesome if Retro, or whoever, could sort of sneak them in as a sort of bonus world you unlock after beating the main game, with King K-Rool as the true hidden final boss. A surprise that many might not see coming, but one that everyone would appreciate. That'd be a fan pleaser. One idea I've seen online, specifically by a YouTube user of CJs001, is to have the 3 main different kinds of Donkey Kong enemies team up. So you have the Tikis, the Snowmads, and the Kremlings all teaming up together to rule against Donkey Kong Island. It sounds really cool in concept, and we definitely have a great, unique bunch of enemies all mixed together, but it's one I would really like, and I think many fans would really like to see. Finally, just because they're some of my favorite levels, I'd really like if they had at least one minecart, one rocket barrel, and one silhouette level for each world. Well, thank you all very much for viewing. Let me know if you like these ideas, some, all, or none. And if you have any of your own, please comment down below and share them. I'm curious to know what other people think. With that said, let's stay hopeful for a possible third DKCR game, hopefully on the Switch, sometime in the near or distant future. Adios!